One of the topics that we like to talk about here on Retire Right every, 6 months or so, we haven't done this for a while since we had Rachel Lane on the podcast, is aged care. Because as we get older, our parents are getting older and there could be a need for some aged care. Now, when we think about aged care, it's not aged care equals nursing home. Aged care can start with in-home care. But today on Retire Right, I'm joined by Nathan Fradley from Fradley Advice. Is that what you're called? Mm-hmm. Fradley Advice. He's becoming a bit of a local pest on the podcast. We're just doing a bit of an aged care recap.
Yep.
We've actually put some slides together because, more and more this show is getting popular on YouTube. So we want some visuals to accompany what we're talking about so people can learn and understand more. Of course, if you are driving, you will be okay. We will walk you through it. But please, if you want to see the visuals, you can do so on YouTube and we'll put a link below. Nathan, just give everyone a bit of a recap who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so you're right. Fradley Advice is correct. Boring name, but it's my last name and it works. I work in areas of advice where it's both technically and emotionally challenging. So aged care is one of those areas, lots of Centrelink, curly-whirlies, as well as a lot of emotions in the family. Also work in divorce, as well as estates, or in general retirement situations, but there might be some complications with split families or ex-spouses or just things are a bit more tricky.
Yeah, so you operate in a higher net worth, complex world of retirement. And I think you said last time we did the episode that more than 50% of people that you talk with, you refer them elsewhere because you're not their guy.
Yeah, I'll chat with everyone. Everyone gets a call. We'll walk through what they need. And if I'm not the right person, I will always help find them.
Yeah, awesome. Well, my name is Glen James. Let's talk about aged care.
This is a podcast that will help you plan and execute one of the biggest moments in your life. That's retirement. You'll learn how to set up your finances in a way that benefits you, your lifestyle goals, and keeps you in the know within this complex world of money and investing. Your host is Glen James, former financial advisor, author, and host of the popular Money, Money, Money podcast. Glen is joined by experts in various fields around the topic of retirement in Australia. Any advice in this podcast is of a general nature. Full details are in the show notes of this episode. You only retire once, so retire right.
Rightio. So we've put a presentation together. Look, high level, we just want to say this. It's impossible to get into the weeds of every single person's unique situation because we'll do these videos and people will put in the comments, what about this or what about that? It's like, yeah, there is just so much that goes on with every single strategy. So we might not get in the weeds too much, but this will be a really good overview for people who are new to understanding aged care and how it works. Now, what other caveat do you have?
This all changes on the 1st of November.
Yes.
So it was supposed to come through on the 1st of July and they've delayed it. But I think while the areas we're discussing, the specifics we discussed today will change, the themes are very much the same. So the concepts, the approach that you'll be looking at it through, but the numbers will look different.
Based on just some anecdotal case studies that you've looked at, do you think when the new changes come in, you will be quote unquote financially worse off under the new system?
I'm going to be really diplomatic and say you will contribute more to your own care.
Yes.
It's going to $29,000 a year. They pay $8,000 a year in rates. They make the best they can from the market. They grow some of their own stuff at the back and they won't move because they've been there for 60 years. And then they go into care and all of a sudden these bills start showing up and there are implications in contributing towards this and paying these costs in the interim. And people aren't sure what to do. They don't want to make the wrong decision. They don't want to stuff something up, but they want to help. And that's why I think this is so common.
And when we look at, we're going to do a bit of an overview of aged care fees and whatnot. But and we'll talk about it later, but we'll just for right now maybe just assume that mum or dad have already passed away and mum or dad is still in their home. So we'll just assume that for now. We will talk about what happens if mum and dad are living in their home and one of them needs to go into care, but we'll just assume one at the moment just for simplicity. If there is, like, what's the first step that people need to take if they think there is some physical or cognitive decline and mum and or dad might need some help? Is it, do you go to a GP and start the ACAT assessment? Do you have to call human services or whatever they're called?
That you can contact My Aged Care directly,
Right,
and organise that assessment, and that should be the first point of contact. Because even if it's not, as you said before, a residential care thing, moving into a home, that might get them some extra support. And we won't get anywhere near it today, but the changes to the home care rules, I think, are really positive.
Great.
And it's going to really open up some support for people to stay home longer, and people who are home longer are happier. So that's the absolute first step. And then working with their GP if there's some cognitive issues, or what usually happens is mum's in hospital, they won't let her go home. She had a fall, it's unsafe. She broke her hip, she's got dementia, whatever it is. People leave it too late.
Yeah.
And that's more common. They maybe people try. Quite often they'll come in, they'll speak to me that we're thinking we want to plan ahead, we want to do something, and there's resistance, and there's good reason. It's a loss of independence, and it's challenging for someone to think about that. But I think at the very least that can be a way in. Mum, let's get you a bit of help around the house. Let's get you a little bit of support. We can't always come over and do this, even though you like us to come over and do it because it's a reason for us to come and see you. That's probably the best first step, I'd say. Yeah.
So let's move now to the basic how the world works. And so what you're saying is conceptually the concepts won't change post 1st of November, but the amounts and
some of the names will change.
Right.
But the way I'll walk you through this, the model will be the same.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So I will hand it to you to go to this first slide, and if you can just describe each pillar for those just listening only.
So the first thing that people know about is the accommodation. So that's when you hear the RAD, the DAP, people used to call it a bond. This is paying for the roof over someone's head. And so this is usually a lump sum of money. It's quoted, it might be $550,000 or now up to $770,000 will become more common because of the changes. And often people panic and they go, I don't have that kind of money. Mum and dad don't have that kind of money. If you don't have the money to pay the lump sum, it is charged at an interest amount, a daily interest, which is called a DAP. And we're already getting complex, but this is for people who are full
Which
fee
is the
paying.
Daily interest payment.
Yeah, daily accommodation.
Accommodation payment.
Yeah, correct, yeah. And that interest rate is set by the government. It's mandated. It's not low. It's 7.78, I think, right now. And it is 100% refundable under the current rules. So that's the accommodation component for full fee paying people when they go in.
I thought there was, and tell me to shut up, but I thought there was a thing where they could withhold up to an amount.
That's the new rules.
Okay, all right, I'll shut up. Okay, now we've got these fees, because you've got 4 pillars on the screen, and there is care and living expenses. What are these 2 pillars?
Yeah, so the care and living is kind of blended between what we call the basic daily fee. Everyone pays it. You got someone with $1 billion going into aged care. If they went into normal residential care, they would still pay this amount. It's calculated at 85% of a single person's pension. So it indexes. So whenever someone's like, oh, got a pay rise today because my pension went up, so did your basic daily fee. And that's a standard. It's about 60-something bucks a day, $63-ish a day. And then for the means tested fee is the other one. And this is what they calculate based off how much money you have. This fee is variable. And it's probably going to be a big theme of today's discussion. That's changing in nature in November. We'll come.
This means tested fee here.
It's going to be called the non-clinical care contribution because that's nice and easy to say.
Oh, yeah, and remember.
NCCCCCCCC.
Yeah.
It will effectively be the same.
Yeah.
So conceptually, they're the two aspects that kind of cover care and living expenses in the home. And these three are all very standard fees.
Okay, so just on these three here, the accommodation payment, that can vary between facilities.
Correct.
Because you might have one in a luxury area with ocean views and all this wonderful grounds and all that stuff. So the RAD could be $1 million at that facility, but the one in the back streets where we all grew up, Nan's nursing home, that could be $450,000.
Correct.
However, both residents would pay this $70 a day or the basic daily fee.
They'll both pay a basic daily fee, and then depending on their means, the means tested
Yes.
fee. Yeah.
So the basic daily fee, is that changing
That is fixed.
in November? Sorry.
No, that stays
Yes.
the same as well. It is not changing at all.
But the means tested fee will change.
The rules around it will change.
And then also with the accommodation payment, the RAD, going forward, there will be a withheld amount,
there's going to be a retained amount,
and then the rest will go to the estate.
and there's going to be an indexation being applied to unpaid aspects.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a couple of things happening there, but it will still be called the RAD. And that's one of the things that's scaring people. It's 2% a year, up to 5 years. They say it's 10%. It's not quite, because it's not how it accumulates. Works out about 9.61 for the maths nerds. But they will retain a portion of the RAD.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then the fourth kind of fee is the additional services fee.
Yeah.
Now, talk to us about this one.
So this fee has been kind of problematic, not in really badly, but a lot of the times when you enter a facility, they'll say, are you going to join this additional services fee? And you have to decide. And sometimes whether you get offered a place is whether or not you accept it. And it makes sense to a point, because it's covering things like it might cover better food. Maggie Beard did a great episode on this years ago about how she went into a facility and worked on their food and improved it all. And they got to the end and they were like, oh, this is great. She's like, you roll it out. And he's like, well, we only have 70 cents a day to feed people. So no. And it was going to be $1.50. So that's what most of the time this goes to better food. Commonly it's about $10 a day. I've seen as low as nothing. I've seen up to $150.
So the additional services fee, that's in every facility?
No, it's based on the facility that they go into. And
because
how they operate.
the slide before, see that at the top that says not included in these costs are medication, allied health services, haircut and outings. Some facilities, correct me if I'm wrong, the additional service fee may include a haircut.
May include it.
And this is where it goes back to that if you're on the Vaucluse clifftop view facility, that the RAD is $1 million, you might be paying $100 a day because they do a yoga session for some of the people who are there. I don't know. Or
I'm working with a family at the moment.
A barber or a hairdresser and all the stuff.
Yeah, or it might be subsidised cost. Yeah, I'm working with a family at the moment. The room rate for shared room, both parents in, at $2.6 million. And it's $138 a day each in additional services.
Now, would there be some places where it's compulsory?
This has been the problem.
Right. And that's probably where the gouging could happen.
Yeah, and I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the facilities and say, how do you offer a scalable service package to everyone unless everyone takes it? But this change is going to be quite drastic in the new model. Even for residents that are already there, that actually won't get grandfathered, they'll all move to the new thing. This is actually going to be something where it gets signed onto after you've joined, after you've entered, so it has no bearing on your entry. And it's package-based. So residents will be able to opt into what they use and opt out of what they don't.
So, example, I'm just doing some rough numbers here. With the basic daily fee, which is 85% of the pension, if it was a single person, that would be $22,500 a year, which leaves $4,500 a year or $86 a week.
Yep.
If someone didn't have any other assets and they put all their assets into the RAD, this $86, they can either keep it.
So if they had no other assets, Yeah, it depends on how much assets they put against the RAD, and that's what. But
Yeah, okay.
ignoring that. Yeah, sorry.
So, but are we saying because the additional service fees, it might not be compulsory? Like if mum or dad needs a haircut and they're in that facility and they have to pay for that, is that the thing behind that is, well, that extra $4,500 a year that is not garnished by the basic daily fee, is that their money to buy clothes and stuff like that?
And it doesn't go very far.
No.
No, and that's a big consideration in those areas where you've got certain facilities just may not be suitable.
Yeah.
Which the new changes, the higher living fee, I think they're changing it. HELF is the acronym. That's the optional nature of that is going to take some pressure off a lot of families, I think, with the new changes.
Right.
And the new changes will introduce another fee called a hoteling contribution, which is it works in the rest of them. No point getting to that now.
Yeah, so on this slide, as at today, the means tested fee, how do they check that?
So they're going to look at everything you've got in the bank. It works very similar to Centrelink.
Right.
So if anyone's familiar with Centrelink rules, it works very similar. But the means tested fee has a couple of differences. So any money in the RAD or paid onto the RAD is ignored for Centrelink purposes.
Right.
And if you're in aged care, you're considered...
Well, but that's because it's a house, basically.
Yeah, and you're considered a non-homeowner.
Right.
Yeah, or separated by illness, so you'll get a higher rate of pension. So if there is a couple, you mentioned that before, and one goes in, they actually get an increase to their base pension rate. But the means tested fee does count what's in the RAD.
Right.
So it adds that in.
Right. Okay.
But then if you've still got a house, let's say the house is mum's moving into care and she's got a $3 million house, they only count that as being worth the $206-ish thousand, which is the home exemption cap.
And that's what I used to tell people. Like if mum or dad has a fall or something happens, stroke, and like an overnight situation, right? Because often cognitive decline creeps in. But if it's an overnight event, when people used to come and like freak out, mum or dad, we've got to put them in a home or they can't go home, don't just think you got to sell the house, because it might be financially better off for their finances and therefore the estate to keep the house, put a tenant in there, receive rent, and do the razzle dazzle with the numbers and paying interest to the facility as opposed to putting the capital in. So I used to tell people, don't just instantly think we have to sell the house. Get some advice first. All that to say, on the 1st of November, is that strategy out the window?
It's largely the same.
Right.
So this idea of, I used to hate hearing it. Just sell the house.
Because the
just
rent,
sell the house.
Yeah, because the rent received is not deemed, is it?
It is.
It is?
It's not deemed. It is accessible.
It is accessible, but not deemed.
But the
Okay.
house is not.
Yes.
So the house, if you rent the house out, and this is part of the case study too, if you rent the house out, they still assess the value of the house at $206,000,
Yes.
even if it's $3.5 million.
Because I did strategies where it was financially better off to keep the house, put a tenant in there, pay the interest payment each day because there was no RAD, and it was all good.
The downside in these days is that the daily payment is calculated on 7.78%.
Right.
It's not a small amount. If rent comes in, you lose some pension.
Yes.
You got
Yeah,
rent,
but
depending
that
on
just
which-
speaks
yeah,
to
the
things
complexity.
change over time.
Yeah.
This is complex.
But rushing to
circumstantial.
sell the house
Don't do
and
that.
getting just whatever you can get for it right now, the system is built in such a way that you don't have to rush, but you may have to sell at some point.
Yeah, and the thing is, and we will get to it, that a lot of these facilities, if you had to move mum and or dad in, you'll have breathing space to pay the RAD. Like they're not going to turn people away, and if you work close with the finance officer at the facility, they're really good. Like
Yeah, big tip, do what you say you're going to do, and most facilities will work with you.
yes,
If you say we're going to put the house on the market and that's all mum and dad have, is it okay if we rack up some
Interest.
interest and some unpaid invoices? And in 3 months, they look on realestate.com.au and the house is still not listed. They're within their rights to be pretty upset with you.
Yeah.
So often they'll put caveats on properties and stuff too. But they're generally pretty good.
Yes.
And they don't have to be.
No.
But they are.
Yeah, because I remember dealing with a client. There was it took a while to sell the house, and I was literally talking with the facility, like, "Hey, it's for sale." Like, they were totally good, and they're like, "Yeah, we get it. We know it's happening, and there's a bit of grace." And that's like if you owe people money, for example, if you communicate on a human level, it's a lot better than ignoring it.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at some broader considerations. Then we'll have a break. Then we'll look at a case study. What do you want people to know with this?
I think the first thing to think about when mum and dad are gone into care and you're wondering what to do, how do we pay the fees? The first thing, because this gets missed all the time, is actually make sure Centrelink knows what's going on. So if you don't update Centrelink, you'll get a letter. And this letter is scary. Because this letter says, hey, we don't know the situation, so we're going to start charging you the maximum daily rate, which is just over $400 a day, just in the means tested fee, on top of the other fees. And often there's no means tested fee for this person, but that's because Centrelink don't know. And so a quick one on that, if your parent has no home right now, they don't own a house, updating Centrelink is logging in if you're their nominee or getting them to update Centrelink their normal way. Trigger an update once they've gone into care, almost immediately when they go into care. It should be within, I think it's 18 months beforehand, but just do it straight away. Even if the balances are the same, give or take $1, that will trigger something in the back end. And then when they enter care, Services Australia is notified and they marry everything up.
Yeah, cool.
Most of the time. If they own a house, you've got to lodge a specific form which tells Centrelink about the house. Ask questions like what's it made out of and what's it worth and all that kind of stuff. If they're not on Centrelink at all, you can lodge a form that says this is their financial situation, or there's a box in that says we don't want to disclose it, just charge us the maximum fee, or you just don't disclose it and they'll charge you the maximum fee. There's kind of the range of options, but I think for most people, getting Centrelink on board earlier means that what happens is Centrelink tell the facility what to charge you. So if you go to the facility and they're like, we're charging you $300 a day in means tested fees, and you're like, mum's got 20 grand in the bank, why? They actually can't change that. They have to charge what Services Australia
Tell them.
Yes. Through Medicare.
Yes.
So you have to update Services Australia in order for them to fix it. And that's a big, they deal with a lot of flack from people for something they have no control over.
You talk about here loaning personal money to them is risky. So what are we talking about there?
So if we tie in the idea of mum's gone into care now, and we're looking at this and sort of the question, mum and dad are going to care, or mum's gone into care and she's got 20 grand in the bank, got this $500,000 RAD. What if I just lend her the money and then get it back once we sell the house? This is what we're talking about.
Right.
So that loan is on face value for the right reasons.
Yes.
It's in their best interest. But the relationship dynamics is what challenges this. So firstly, is mum able to make decisions? Can she enter a loan agreement? Is she cognitive enough? Can she understand it? Brings that question into it. Then is she actually able to act on her own behalf? She might be physically fine, but cognitively not. And then if you're the power of attorney, now you're acting as her in an agreement with yourself. This just starts bringing in all of these potential issues. And then if we add in, you've got siblings, maybe there's a black sheep in the family, you just start compounding issues. And then there's the actual aspects of it. Can this person even enter a loan arrangement under the structure of the power of attorney?
But
all that kind of fun stuff.
Generally speaking, if you've got a plan in place, there shouldn't necessarily need to be a loan to the parent going into the facility.
If they've got the assets to pay the fees, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, well, there's a $500,000 RAD, for example. We know that the house is on the market. It's having trouble to sell. If the facility, if you work with the facility, they're not going to be stop feeding mum or dad if they know that it's in play. Like, I don't think the son or the daughter would have to go, well, look, we'll just pay the RAD now and we'll recoup that money later.
Yeah, it's if you're
Because, and just let me ask a question, because in theory, if 500 grand was loaned to them, on paper, that becomes, for Centrelink purposes, it nets out because it's a debt. But if they then paid that 500 back, does that trigger a gift, or is it a loan repayment and not a gift?
what does the evidence say? So there's two parts to that Centrelink piece, which is the curly-whirly part of all of this. So firstly, you just gave them $500,000. How does Centrelink know that that's a loan?
Yes.
How do they know that there's consideration for that? Straight away, that's why you would document it. Because otherwise you've just given the money. And then you've just taken the money away.
Yeah, it's a gift. Yeah.
Or it's you just taking money out of their account as their power of attorney. You know, like this is yes, it could be for the right intentions, but this, when it comes to matters of powers of attorney and acting on behalf of parents and loved ones, this is where the challenges come in. Secondly, once money's paid on the RAD, you can't take it off.
Yes.
And
That's burned in until they leave the facility or end of the life.
yeah, and if you lend them the money and it goes onto the RAD, the loan doesn't get considered.
Right.
So they actually end up with more money.
So, yeah, don't dick around with this stuff without advice, basically.
Yeah, loaning money is tricky. People might pay a little bit of it. Maybe there's some pressure from the facility. It's been a while.
Yeah, can
maybe
you kick the
feel
tin with 50
pressure.
grand or something? Yeah.
Yeah, and smaller amounts with good record keeping. But this is the curly stuff that it usually comes back to. Hey, we don't want to sell the house. We want to keep it in the family. And then it comes back to that question of who is this for? Are you trying to keep the house for the family? Are you trying to keep it in because you want to inherit it? That's where this starts becoming problematic. Yeah, even if it's in the best intentions, even if it's what mum would have wanted.
Yes. And, yeah, it's crazy. Look, let's take a break unless there's any other important considerations.
I think we'll explore those as we do the case study.
Sweet. We'll be back right after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to retireright.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's retireright.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, we're back. We're going to do a bit of a case study here. Again, the case study, Nathan, it is based on a widow. However, we will talk about if there is, mum and dad living together and one needs to go into care. So talk to us about Carol.
So this is Carol's a classic case of very little assets, got the family home, something's happened, need to go into care. So in this instance, she's got 3 kids, one's power of attorney. Everyone seems to get along pretty well. And I note varied levels of individual financial success. It seems odd that that's relevant, but it really is, because it's when you start, as a financial advisor, I start looking for any family dynamics that could potentially be problematic in decision making. House worth $1.6 million. She's lived in it for 50 years. Lots of memories, lots of physical things. And when I say physical things, then I'm talking about stuff. 50 years of life, 50 years of accumulated American scientific magazines and, all that kind of stuff. Her room is $550 RAD, and there's an additional services fee or higher everyday living fee of $10 a day. And Carol's got about 20 grand in the bank. That's it.
So that's kind of the current situation. Now then, if we have a look, I'm just having a look. So these questions here.
This is what people are asking.
Right.
What are the fees? What are we actually paying here? I'm not really sure. Do I pay them? Do we just pay mum's RAD? What happens if we sell the house? Does anything change?
I guess to the start of the episode, that common question, do we have to pay mum or dad's fees? The answer is no.
Yeah.
Almost always.
I'm so hesitant any time someone wants to do it.
Yeah.
Because of the chain of problems that can occur. Occasionally, it can make sense.
But this is similar. Like, it also gets off track really fast if you're one of 3 siblings and you flick in 200 grand for mum, then we've got an estate planning equalisation issue.
100%. Because it's not your money, it's not mum's issue unless there's a loan in place.
Yes.
Could mum enter that loan arrangement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, so back to the cricket. Should I pay the fees? Probably not. Should I pay the RAD? Probably not. What happens once we sell? Do we have to sell or we can keep the house in the family? So this is a big eyegasm in the coming up slides. Talk us through these slides here.
What I was doing here is giving an idea of what mum's fees are right now.
Right.
So I'll go through them to give listeners and the viewers a bit of an idea of what to expect because they're going to get bill shock.
Yes.
So in this situation, I've assumed she's got 20 grand but getting no interest.
So this table here is currently living at home.
No, she's just gone into care.
Right. Okay.
So she's getting $29,000.
Why the heck is there $10,000 there in home insurance and rates?
Because it's rates. Because her house is for $1.6 million.
Oh, no. So are we saying she's moved into the home and kept the house?
Still got the house.
Right.
She's moved in last week.
Is there an intention to sell the house in this?
That's why they've come to speak to me.
Ooh. All right. I'll buy it.
This is about as like tip-top white bread inquiry as I get. This is so common.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's $10,000 because mum's been living at home with 29 grand coming in and she's been paying $8 grand a year in rates.
Yeah.
You know, and $2 grand a bit of home insurance. She's got personal expenses of $5 grand. You know, that's outside of like, what she would pay for groceries and all the rest of it at home. But this is her in care. Basic daily fee, $23,000. Higher ed everyday living fee, $10 a day. And there's a DAP. There is a daily payment for that accommodation because they've paid nothing on the RAD of almost $43,000 a year. So day one, mum moves into care. They've got this house that's doing nothing, 20 grand in the bank, and her annual fees, $69,000.
Yes.
Plus personal expenses. Plus
so she's in the whole 55 grand a year.
55 grand a year from day dot.
So the first immediate question, can you rent the bastard for 55 grand a year?
Well, can we rent it? Is it an estate to rent?
Yeah, I don't know.
How much work needs to be done to it? Like, I mean, I'm in Victoria. Glen, the standards for, for home rentals is quite high. So you got to spend a bit of money getting them up and running.
So can we get $1,060 a week-ish?
Maybe, yeah.
But that's also not really the question because then that $1,000 a week comes online for assessment.
And I've done the numbers on it.
Have you really?
I've done the numbers
Should
on
we
it.
go there?
We can. But I think the key to this, just a quick takeout, is where do you find $5,800 a month? And that's why people are worried. That's why they're coming to me panicking. Because there's not many other places you don't have to pay the bill straight away. Yeah, aged care might be good and they might be fair, but you shouldn't have to ask them to do it either.
Yeah.
They're just doing it out of the good of their heart. So let's jump in.
All right. What are the options, my friend?
Put the cash in high interest. Cool. We've made 4% on 20 grand. That's not bridging the gap. Do we lend Carol the money? Do we lend her the lump sum for the RAD? Do we speak to the facility about running up overdue fees? Highlight that straight away. Good communication is key. A couple of other options, if you click through. We rent it.
Yeah.
Already brought that up. Or we sell. Right? So what do they look like in numbers-wise? Let's jump into that and talk through it.
Oh, goodness
now, this is a shocking slide if you're looking at this. There's so much happening on here.
Yeah. And if you're driving along, well, just enjoy the dulcet
We're going to walk you through it.
We're
going to walk you through it. So right now, we know she's $55,000 in the hole. So let's rent it out. Let's say she gets 60 grand for it. So I think it was like 3.8%, on that property. Straight away, we've now got an assessable income for the age pension. So her age pension drops. So her income's decreased. So while we've filled some of the gap, did we fill all of it? It's also assessable for the means tested fee. So now she didn't have one. Now she has one. So we're getting about 73 grand a year in total between rental income and age pension. We're forking out 23 grand in basic daily fee, the high everyday living fee, an additional 9 grand in means tested fees, and we're still paying that DAP. So we're $78,000 in the negative. But now we've got rental expenses for the home. We've got to make sure it's insured. We've got to, pay, and we've still got to pay things like, and we've got land tax.
Yeah.
Now I've chucked 10 grand in. Every state's completely different.
Yeah, I was going to say it really
depends.
Probably overkill, but
it really depends, right? I want to flag that big time.
Yeah.
I did have a as that case I was talking about before, the
I
high
mean, you're
one.
from the state that's got the worst land taxes in the world.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I've put in a big number there. You can adjust that based on your state, based on your situation. It can
Yeah.
be material. For really expensive houses, it can be quite material. For cheaper houses, less so, depending on how it's calculated. But
Yeah.
the point being, we've got all these other outgoings still. So we've got 73 in, 78 out, plus whatever home expenses, plus whatever personal expenses need to happen. We haven't filled the gap yet. And there's tax potentially, depending on how much she's writing off on the house and all the rest of it. That's really circumstantial as well.
Okay, so rent the house, we're still in the hole.
Still in the hole.
Sell the house, which means we're putting the money into the RAD.
Correct. We're paying that RAD off.
Yeah.
And then I've assumed in this instance, we just chucked $1 million into a term deposit at 4%. Nice round number of $40,000. The rest of it sits in low interest account, accessible. Whether that's a good idea is neither here nor there. But there's not much there. And you end up with a basic daily fee is the same. But the means tested fee is $24,500 a year. So our aged care fees are still $51,000 a year, but we're not paying $42,000 in that RAD anymore. So this is kind of this environment where you don't want to sell it immediately because you could find 10, 20, 30 grand by spending a bit of time doing up the house, making sure you got the right buyer, all that kind of stuff. But in this instance, if she's got no other assets, it might be just what you have to do. And that's the unfortunate reality. Another little interesting thing over time, that means tested fee, Centrelink total that up each year. And you hit the lifetime cap, it's about just under $85,000 at the moment. You don't pay that ever again.
Okay, so there is some silver lining with this strategy.
Yeah. So in 4 years' time, that could be the case. There's also another thing that I didn't put in here, but if you do get advice, there's some specific products for aged care, people in aged care, that are more favourable for means testing and provide fixed rates of interest and things like that.
Oh, like annuities.
It's an aged care specific annuities.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then you're still in the hole,
You're still in the hole, though.
17,000. Where would the $17,000 a year come from? Capital, right.
Yep. So we might leave 20 or 30 grand in cash, draw down that over the course of the year.
Yep.
Term deposit comes up in a year's time, leave some out, go again.
Okay, cool.
So mum's still paying for her cost of care.
Yep. Now, lend the RAD. What does that mean?
That means someone said, we don't want to sell the house yet, so we're going to lend mum the money for the RAD, the $550.
Yeah, so they get the documentation, that's all honky-dory.
Everything's fine. We're
Yeah.
assuming that there's no issues. Power of attorney's
Yeah.
a family friend.
You're an only child, blah, blah, blah.
And you can afford to lend
Yeah.
mum $500,000.
Yep.
You lend that across. What does that mean? Well, this is highlighting the fact that the loan, that family loan agreement, doesn't matter for the means tested fee. That money goes across and goes onto that RAD, and that RAD is still counted for the means tested fee. There's something about breaking the nexus that it no longer connected. So she ends up with a means tested fee of $8,000. But the question is, if this could work, $8,000 of means tested fee is a lot less than $42,000 of TAP. So there is situations where lending the money to mum may make sense.
Yes.
But you've got all of those ducks, and it's like so many of these
But
things
you
have to
still,
line
when
up.
it washes up here, you're still in the hole $50,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, 20
$20,000.
20
You've
grand, sorry.
still got to, maybe you got to lend extra money to mum. Maybe you got to pay those fees. How do you monitor that? How do you maintain all of his records? It is one of those things where maybe if someone's got $1.6 million of assets, they need to pay their way. Yeah.
So what we're saying, the best case scenario here is, ultimately it depends, is the end of the slide. So what we're saying here, Carol or mum needs to go into a home. The RAD is $550. The house is worth $1.6. So there is $1 million that is out of the equation. It's going to be in cash, could be and let's be clear as well, it might go into an investment account. You can do whatever you want with it. The question is, we don't know how old Carol is here. If Carol's 90,
It's a different equation than
looking
if
good
she's,
for 90, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we are doing anything more than cash or term deposits.
There's a real ethical dilemma in this space because you've got to invest for them.
Yes.
And so if you start investing because mum's fees are covered, we're sorted, let's invest the rest of the money for the estate, the question is, who is this for? And it can be what they would have done otherwise, but there's a bit of a dilemma.
So there's going to be
in this
$1 million
space.
in Carol's bank account, in cash, high interest savings account, and then each year there's going to be 17 grand a year that's getting taken up to the threshold. So 2, 4, 6, 8, call it 5 years.
I think it was like 24 or something, but yeah.
Yeah, after 5 years or so, or whatever it is, that will reduce.
Mm-hmm. And then they'll stop altogether, and then she'll have more than enough from there.
Yeah. So the age, it's like, what's the life expectancy of someone entering care? 3 years?
The stats say new entrants, it's like 11 months for men and 10 months for women.
Yeah,
It's the other way around, 11 months for women, 10 months for
Yeah.
men. But that's because people tend to enter care at the last possible moment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but most of the tables and most of the work we do, we look 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Now, in this, there's 2 things we haven't talked about, and that is what happens with, so let's just say Carol, she's got the $1.6 million home, she's got 20 grand in the bank, and she's on full Centrelink pension. What happens if she needs a home care package? Does she have to pay for that?
While she's at home
While
before
she's
she
at
moves
home.
into care, there is a contribution.
Right.
And in the new rules, that's going to change dramatically.
Right.
So people are going to be contributing a lot more for certain
But if
aspects of
she's
their care.
cash poor,
Then she's probably going to pay nothing in this
Yeah.
instance without doing the numbers. She
Yeah.
probably, if not the minimal,
yeah.
no.
So
contribution.
there's a good safety net in Australia. You'll be looked after, but this is like, I know when we were trying to move Nan into a nursing home 1 million years ago, okay, well, there was a waiting list at Baddo Bay. We couldn't get Baddo Bay, but went over to Wyong, and like sometimes you got to get where there is a bed. And I will say you can move facilities and transfer the RAD.
You can. What you actually exit and then come back. If you do that, if you exit a facility and then you re-enter after the 1st of November,
Do they grandfather it?
some of it.
Right, gosh.
There's a whole episode on that. But I think the important thing is in that, to your point, everyone can get care in Australia.
Yes.
So if Cara had no money,
Yeah.
she goes in as either we call a fully supported or a low means person. The RAD that's advertised is actually calculated based on her means.
Right.
And becomes variable. If Carol's husband is still living at home,
Okay, let's now.
That opens up.
Let's open the chat box of. We'll add Carol and David. They've got their $1.6 million home. They've got their full age pension of 45 grand. David had a stroke overnight. Can't care for himself. We have to move David into a home. But Carol's right as rain. Like, she's healthy, she's fit, she's, all that stuff. How does it work? Does Carol have to sell the house to pay for David's care?
no.
Right.
And there is a real beauty to the system. I find it fascinating how it works itself out, as complicated as it is. In that instance, Carol would be regarded as a protected person, providing she met the requirements. And so in that instance...
And by requirements means I'm a spouse of the person that's going in.
Yeah.
Or I'm financially dependent.
There's some rules around carers, around spouses,
Yeah.
around that sort of stuff. But because sometimes you might have a child living with you that's cared for you a long period of time, they could be a protected
Yes.
person. So, but in that instance, then the house is exempt. So instead of having $206,000 plus 20 grand, David is only assessed at having 20 grand,
Right.
which means he goes in as a fully supported person.
So he doesn't have to pay the $550 RAD or the daily interest cost.
Correct. If he had 20 grand in the bank or under $50,000, his accommodation costs would be zero.
But he still needs to pay the basic daily fee,
Correct.
which now is that calculated at
It's exactly the same.
85% of the couple's pension or just half?
So 2 parts. Firstly, it's 85% of a single person pension no matter what, even if you don't get a pension.
Okay, so they've just got to pay $70 a day.
It's just the number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when he goes into care, he counts as they are a couple separated by illness.
Right.
So they go from receiving the couple's pension to receiving 2 single pensions.
Right.
So they get a pay rise.
Yes.
So effectively, Carol at home starts receiving $29,000, single person, and David receives $29,000, single person.
80%, 85% of David's will get sucked up in the daily fee.
Yeah, and it is invoiced. It doesn't come out of their pension. I think that's a common misconception.
It's not garnished from Centrelink.
You get the invoice, you pay the invoice.
Yep.
Yep, correct. So it's really powerful because it means that Carol doesn't have to sell. You know, she's not forced to move into care. Carol's fine, you know, she doesn't need to.
What happens if David's in care and this is all set up, the house is in joint tenants, Carol goes to Brazil and does some bungee jumping and they just don't have the regulations there and dies tragically in an accident? David now has a house.
Yeah.
Does that mean it's a resetting of the rules and we have to now pay a RAD?
Once he is low means, supported or partially supported, fully supported, he's still low means.
So he could have $1.6 million in cash after Carol's bungee jumping accident and doesn't have to pay. So
that accommodation amount is variable and means tested when you're low means.
Right.
So instead of it being called a RAD, instead of a DAP, there's a DAC, or instead of it's basically, So there is another system in place that says we've calculated his means. He now has to pay $400,000 of accommodation, in which case he would be in a very similar situation than before. But if you are thinking about maybe Dave and Carol need to go in. If David went in a day before Carol, he would go in as low means.
So it could be strategic.
There is a strategic aspect to this if both parents need to go in.
We've covered a lot of ground, and I think today I really wanted to just provide comfort to people to not stress out about the financials because it will work out and it will be fine. Even if it's after November or before, everyone will be fine. The stress is the relational trying to move someone in who needs the care and they don't think they need it. And that's a whole other discussion. And maybe I'll do an episode with a psychologist or someone to help walk through that. But we will do another episode after the 1st of November once all this is put to bed. So we'll basically run this same case study, but with the new rules after November.
Yeah, great.
So, but just on that, you know, if mum or dad is living in a $1.6-2 million home and they need to go into care, it's okay to pay $10,000 or advice fee to do this right, whatever the fee might be.
There's the financial benefit of doing it. You know, people delay it. That family I was talking about in the really expensive facility, there was some infighting between siblings as to spending the money. That delay cost them $60,000.
Yeah.
So there is benefit in the numbers, and a lot of HQ advisors like myself also do a lot of hand-holding. We talk to Centrelink, we talk to the facility, we deal with
project manager.
We deal with the shares, we transfer them into him, all that stuff. We take that off you.
Yeah.
Because you've got other stuff to worry about. There's a lot of that value in this piece. Yeah.
So get advice. Don't be afraid. You know, the Centrelink financial information service probably could help if it's relatively low cost. So if there's, you know, mum and dad living in a home, they've got no super, they've got 10 grand in cash, what do we do? Well, you might not need advice in that situation because it's literally follow the bouncing ball. It's a low means, what do they call it? A low means.
If they had no assets, it would be a low means.
Yeah, a low means fully supported entrant. You probably won't need strategic financial advice. But if there's assets, so what if Carol and David had $500,000 in their super each, he's no longer low means.
Correct.
So
goes over the 200,000, now we're in a different game again.
Yeah, so that's a good threshold. If there's assets over 200,000, there could be an advice discussion needed.
Either a house or assets.
Yeah.
Because the house will be valued at that number.
Yeah.
That's really that threshold. But I also encourage, like, a lot of the time I can help that conversation through a 15-minute call, or you go to a office officer, or it is a bit simpler, but there's still some stuff I need to do.
Awesome. We'll put a link if you want to reach out to Nathan Fradley Advice in the show notes. He'll help you all over Australia. Everyone's online now. There's not really a need to sit down with. I know a lot of you want to sit face-to-face with your advisor, but there's no real need. I think you just need to know if you're recommended to someone, we trust them. And yeah, we hope that this has taken a bit of anxiety away with mum and dad who might need to move into a home. My name's Glen James. Thanks, Nathan. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive, Pty Ltd, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds Financial Services Licence 451289. Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, and its employed financial advisors are authorised representatives of Synchron Advice, AFSL 243313. Opinions or comments from any guest on the podcast are theirs, and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective licence holders.